Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Paige here for another day of Reborn with me, or Reborn with Paige. So in today's video we're going to be doing modeling, and this is all the supplies that you need for the modeling layers that we'll be doing. We're doing 4 different layers, and I think you're going to really enjoy this part of the reborning process because it really adds realism to your baby and makes your baby's flesh look more realistic. So for this step you will need your tweezers, and I'm just plucking out areas on my cosmetic wedge. I'm plucking the edges. You don't want any sharp edges, plucking the corners and the inside of the cosmetic wedge. And here I've moved the wedge closer to the screen so you can see what I'm doing. And there you have it. You've plucked all the corners. Your wedge is now ready to begin the modeling process. Once you have your wedge ready, you can begin mixing up the thinner and the color paint that you need. So it's 1 tablespoon of thinner and then 1 touch of the crimson. And a touch is when you use your 1/4 inch mop brush and you just barely touch it into the paint. You just want a tiny bit of this crimson or raspberry color. Just a tiny bit goes a long way. So notice how I just barely coated the bristles of my brush, just a tiny little bit. And then you mix it on your paint palette, in the well of your paint palette. If you don't have a paint palette like mine, use a little tiny jar or a tiny little dish, anything that can hold a small amount of liquid. And if you'll notice, I pre-mix some in my flower well, so that's why it's essential to have a flower well palette to use. And then you use your 1/2 inch mop brush to paint the color onto your sponge. And then you're going to pounce this on your baby's vinyl. But before you start pouncing, you need to blot it off on your puppy pad because you don't want to add too much paint to begin with. So I'm blotting off my sponge, and then you just add the paint and make the pattern a random. You do not want to overlap those modeling layers because then it will get too dark. You just want to randomly pounce on your baby's vinyl. If you'll notice, as I'm pouncing, the vinyl has some areas where it's a little shiny, and that's how you can tell where you have pounced on the vinyl. One thing you need to realize in reborning is everything is done in layers. And so we do soft, subtle washes of color on our baby's vinyl, and then we add to those layers throughout the process of reborning, just to add those wash layers on top of each other. It creates lifelike skin. It also shows that there's blood flowing under the skin when you do this modeling layer, so that your baby looks more real and lifelike. Because our ultimate goal is to create lifelike reborns. And just continue to bounce. I do not put any modeling layers on my cheeks, my nose, or anywhere on the face, the front of the face. Only on the forehead, the sides of the ears, and behind the head. Now begin pouncing your mottling on all of the limbs, the arms and the legs, doing the same type of pouncing that you did on the head. Just keep it very, very random and don't overlap your layers of mottling. You want to be able to see that it's mottled and not just a painted sculpt. And always wear your gloves whenever you're handling your reborn, so as not to put any of your oils on the vinyl's skin, your hand oils. And then put it on the drying rack to dry. Now we're going to begin pouncing on our legs. I add more paint with my brush. I call this the raspberry model because it helps you visualize the color and what it should look like. It's more of a raspberry color. You can always use your puppy pad for a surface to get better leverage on your painting. If it's hard to hold it in your hands, you can lay it down on the puppy pad, as long as you're very careful not to smear the paint. I think it'll be okay. And then use your big paintbrush if you want to hold it without touching the vinyl. Or a dowel rod or a wooden spoon works as well. And then we're going to let that flash off and dry. Once all of the layers are dry, then you can bake in your new wave oven for 265 degrees for 8 minutes. I always try to remember to blot my sponge off on my puppy pad so as not to get too dark of a color in spots. I want it to be all of the modeling to look even and not too much color, especially when you're painting with the blue. Vinyl soaks up blue paint really, really well. I mean, it's very pigmented, and so you have to be very, very careful when painting using the blue colors. And then after you're all done, I add a little bit of the model color to the palms of the hand and the feet. I love how the modeling just brings the skin to life. This is a very exciting and fun part of the reborning process, is modeling your baby's skin to add a little bit of color and dimension to the skin. All right, that looks great. Let's let that dry. Okay, the next thing we're going to be doing is a little bit of a darker raspberry model. It's already flashed off. I've given it a little time for the paint thinner to evaporate, and now I'm adding a little bit more of the raspberry to the odorless thinner to create a more darker paint. And using the same sponge. You can save these sponges, don't ever throw these away. You can reuse your sponges over and over, especially your modeling sponges. Just be sure to only keep one color per sponge. You don't want to mix your colors, but keep your sponges. Don't throw them away because they can be used again and again. We're just adding a little bit more depth with this second model of raspberry over our baby's vinyl. And be sure not to model the face. We don't want any modeling on the cheeks or the nose. I do put a little bit of modeling on the chin though, and the neck, and behind the ears, and on the temples. I hope you were enjoying the reborning process so far, because I know that this is always a relaxing hobby for me, and I just want you to enjoy it as much as I do. And then we're allowing that to flash off and dry. Continuing on, modeling the legs. Just keep your patterns not overlapped. You can kind of tell where you model by the wetness of the vinyl. You'll see when you're modeling your babies that you'll be able to see where you have pressed your sponge onto the vinyl, and add paint as needed using your 1/2-inch mop brush. I noticed when I was looking for brushes that McPherson's has a really nice set of reborning brushes. I don't know how much they are. And probably Bountiful Baby also has a set, so it doesn't really need to be the baby strokes from Dolls by Sandy. You can get nice brush sets from all the different doll shops. So wherever you decide to buy your Genesis heat set paints, look and see what brush sets they have. But I would buy a set of brushes, just because it's hard to know what brushes do you need and how many of each to buy. I know I have several of the same type. I've got I have 3 of the 1/2-inch brushes, and then I've got 3 or 4 of the 1/4-inch ones, because as you're painting you want to quickly change from color to color, and you don't want to have to always rinse and take care of your brushes in between colors. We're adding more paint to our modeling sponge. And just like the neutralizing layer, I do save all of my modeling colors to use again with my next reborn baby. So don't throw any of your paint away. You want to save all of your paint for the next baby that you do, because this is like an addiction. You will definitely want to paint more than one reborn. Once you start painting, you'll want to paint another one. You might use this as a business. You might start a reborning business, or you might do some custom doll babies for people or for yourself. Okay, let's let those flash off to dry, and continuing with our raspberry color modeling layer. I am creating an ebook, and so I will link that in the description box below if you would like to get one of my ebooks if you're a visual learner or just want to have a reference guide to go by. Alright, we're going to let all of those flash off to dry, and then we're going to bake at 265 degrees for 8 minutes in our New Wave oven. Alright, we're back. Now we're going to be doing the next second layer, which is the lime layer. This layer is really fun to do because it's so different and unique, and not a lot of Reborn artists use this layer, and so I think it's super fun. So what we're going to create is a wash of green and yellow to create a lime color. I just use a half a brush, which is just covering half of your mop brush with the green. Okay, now taking your another 1/2 inch mop brush, we're going to do 1/2 stroke of the yellow. And this will create a beautiful lime green wash. One thing you need to know about mottling is that mottling is a see-through layer that you build with each step. So first we did the raspberry mottling layer, and now we're doing a lime green mottling layer. And before you bake this layer, I want you to let it flash off and dry, and then make sure that it looks blended and not too bright, because lime green tends to be bright. But if you're very, very careful and you use it sparingly, I think that you'll be really happy with the results. I want you to also notice how I placed my brushes in the brush cleaner. And this is something that you need to get in the habit of doing, is cleaning your brushes often and after use so that they stay nice and conditioned and clean, and don't leave them laying or sitting in the brush cleaner for too long, because you will need to keep them out of that liquid, otherwise it'll damage the paint on the brush handle. So I also prepared another sponge for this layer, and I don't know if you noticed, but it is a model sponge. I prepared it before we started mixing up the paint. So you will need a fresh new model sponge for each color of paint that you decide to use for your modeling layer. Begin pouncing your model color onto your baby's vinyl. Be sure not to get it on the cheeks or the nose. Just pounce on the forehead and the temples and behind the neck and under the chin, the back of the head. This particular color of model, I did pounce some on the chin, which is fine, but this particular color, the lime green color, it can look bright on the vinyl when it dries. So be sure to check your vinyl before you bake and make sure you're happy with the color, because you can always wipe it off with a sponge with a little bit of odorless thinner on it. And I also like to model the palms of the hands and the bottom of the feet, the fingertips. Continue pouncing your lime green model color on all of your baby's arms and legs, and get all over. Trying not to overlap any of the model colors, and bake between each color modeling. I know sometimes you can get in a hurry when you're painting lots of reborn babies and you just want to add all of the mottling one layer after another. And I would try and avoid doing that just because the colors will mix together. And this way it's nice and clean, translucent colors. I'm sure some of the reborn artists blend them all together, and that's fine because it is a translucent layer. It is probably okay to do that. This video is going to be a little bit longer than some of my other videos because we are adding 4 layers of mottling to our baby's vinyl. But I think it's better to watch along and paint along with me than speed up the video and then you're not able to do reborning with me. It's nice to be able to paint together at the same time and be done at the same time. That's one thing I find frustrating when I watch some of the other reborn artists, is that they do it so quickly that I'm having to rewind the video to see exactly what they did. All right, we're just gonna let those flash off and let them dry. And be sure to store your paint if you plan on painting other reborn baby dolls. Bake at 265 degrees for 8 minutes in your new wave oven. All right, now we're going to start the plum color. I've prepared my sponge. As you can see, I have a nice brand new clean cosmetic sponge or wedge. And the way that you do this next layer is we're going to use our 1/4 inch, oh I'm sorry, it's a half inch. Just coat one side of the brush with the Crimson 01 for the plum color. Now the next color is the Ultramarine blue, and this is a very pigmented blue color. So make sure you only use a touch of the blue and use your 1/4 inch mop brush. The 1/4 inch is the tiniest little mop brush that you have. So just barely tap the end of your brush into the blue color to make the dirty purple. And then if you need to, or the plum, if you need to add more, you can always use the end of your brush and add a tiny bit more blue, but it's so pigmented you have to be super careful. So 2 touches of the Ultramarine blue is enough to make the plum mottling paint color. And then once again, prepare your cosmetic wedge so that you have a fresh new wedge or new cosmetic sponge, and apply the paint with your 1/2 inch mop brush. Blot it out on your puppy pad so as not to get too much paint on your vinyl. And we're ready to start modeling. You do the same thing with this layer. Making sure that you don't get any of the plum color on the cheeks or the nose. And we're just going to pounce the paint onto your baby, the baby sculpt, baby Shannon. Pounce some on the forehead and some on the side of the temples. And now your baby is starting to get a little bit more life and realism. The back of the neck. And let that flash off. Be sure to keep your colors translucent and being able to see through them, because it is supposed to be soft and subtle and not too bright. Purple tends to be too bright if you add too much purple or plum color to your vinyl. I like it nice and soft and subtle. And if you stuck with me to this part of the video, thank you so much. I appreciate it. We're just continuing to model our baby in layers. There is 4 layers. There is the raspberry, the lime green, the plum or dirty purple modeling layer. And then there will be what I call the blueberry layer, and it's like a really nice pretty periwinkle blue or blueberry color. You can do as many layers of modeling as you like, as many as you like or as few as you like. So if you're happy with just the raspberry and the lime green, you can be done, or you can continue and add the 2 other layers. Since you already know at this point how to apply the modeling layers, I'm going to just let you paint and enjoy painting along with me. If you haven't been on my channel before, make sure you watch my previous videos where I talk about base coat and neutralizing and warming layers, warming your vinyl, and also now we're on the modeling layer. Alright, now we are preparing to mix up the blueberry color of model But before I do that, I want to save any of the paint that I've created so far. So I'm getting a mason jar to put my modeling colors in. And you can do the same thing. Just order the jars from Amazon and grab the jars and label them and then preserve your paint. This one is the Plum color, and I've already created some paint, so I'm just going to add the same color of paint to my jar for the next reborn baby. And then you can always mix up the paint with a little bit more thinner and just save that color so that you're not wasting a lot of your thinner. And then use a paper towel or a baby wipe or a cosmetic pad to clean it out. Clean out your paint palette, keep it nice and clean for the next colors. And keep in mind that because these are oil-based paints, you can't just rinse it off in the sink. You have to actually wipe it out using some kind of cloth or pad to keep all of your palettes nice and clean. And then rinse your brushes in your brush cleaner. Can't emphasize enough that you need to take good care of your brushes to maintain the quality of your brushes. You don't want them to get ruined. You might be using these for years to come, and you want to keep the bristles nice and conditioned. This brush cleaner that I got from Michael's is special for paintbrushes, and it's perfect for cleaning your brushes. You can't just clean your brushes in water. It has to be a brush cleaner that can take oils out of the bristles. And here's my 3 modeling colors that we've made so far. And I really love how the paint looks in the jars. And then I save my sponges for the next one as well. All right, let's mix up the blue. Oh, first cook or bake your baby in your new wave oven for 8 minutes on 265 degrees. All right, for the final layer, we're making the blue. And the blue layer is mixed with 1 tablespoon of the odorless thinner and a half stroke of the blue 05. Blue 05. So taking your blue, you just get your 1/2-inch mop brush and you just coat one side of your brush, just the one side. You want this layer to be translucent. And you may want to consider just doing a touch of blue or maybe 2 touches of blue, because this is a very pigmented layer and I don't want you to put too much on your sponge or too much on your babies. So we're going to coat the sponge with the blueberry color. It's kind of like a bright blueberry blue. And then we're going to start modeling our baby, and you need to check your baby after it flashes off and the vinyl has a chance to dry, and make sure those blue layers are not too bright. If they're too bright, then get some paint thinner and swipe it off or blend it off, because you don't want your baby to have too much of the blue modeling. And then I also put less on the vinyl. I add it very sparingly. And make sure you wear your vinyl gloves. I didn't have my gloves on because I just baked the vinyl, and then I had to remove the vinyl from the new wave oven. All right, so we're just going to very random and sparingly add the blue modeling. And even though it is a very translucent layer, this always surprises me how the blue shows up on the vinyl. It's just very, very pigmented. So we're putting it on and keeping the mottling layer just on the forehead, the temples, the back of the head, and the neck. A little bit on the chin area and under the chin. And then we're also going to model the hands and the soles of the feet, just because I feel like your baby needs a little color on those areas as well. All right, we're almost finished with the modeling, and I just want to remind you to bake in your new wave oven for 265 degrees for 8 minutes. Make sure that you let it cool for 8 minutes in between, and store your extra paint in a cute little jar like this one. All right, thanks for watching. Bye everyone.